Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the new naval additions in the Line of Contact dev server. Up first we have the Americans and we've got the USS Forrest Sherman. This is coming after the Charles F. Adams and also shares its same battle rating of 5.3. Whereas the Charles F. Adams is a DDG or a guided missile destroyer, the USS Forrest Sherman is still just a good old gun destroyer. I believe it was the last all-gun destroyer class of the Americans. I could be misremembering that though. But basically it has 3 5-inch 54 caliber guns. This is the mod 18. Very high rate of fire. I think it's like every 2 seconds you can fire. However, there is a slight downside with the Forrest Sherman. If you go on the X-ray viewer, that is your ammo rack above the waterline, which means you are going to get blown out of the water with a single hit. The Blagadrud and the Neustrashimi are going to absolutely eat you for breakfast. The semi-armor piercing round that this thing fires is an absolute menace. But apart from the 3 5-inch 54 calibers, you do also have 4 3-inch 50 anti-aircraft guns. Very high rate of fire, also have proximity fused warheads. Very good guns in my opinion as well. One of the biggest changes after World War II was they basically removed all of the anti-ship torpedoes and replaced them with anti-submarine torpedoes. As you can see, these torpedoes move very slow, 50 kilometers per hour, and only have 200 kilos of TNT equivalent, which makes them pretty useless for anything bigger than a light cruiser really. We then move on to probably one of the biggest additions coming this update, and you might be mistaken for thinking that this is an Iowa. Well, it's not, it's a South Dakota. But the Iowa class was basically a South Dakota that was stretched out to give it 3 more knots or something like that. The easiest way of telling the difference between an Iowa and a South Dakota class is the Iowas have an additional 5-inch 38 turret here. As you can see, the Iowa is basically just a stretched out South Dakota. The South Dakota though does have some major differences. The Iowa has 16-inch 50 caliber guns. The South Dakota has 16-inch 45 caliber guns, which does give you roughly 10% less penetration compared to the rounds fired by the Iowa. But you still get just under 600mm of penetration at a range of 10 kilometers, which is extremely good. And seeing that this is coming just below the Iowa at battle rating 8.3, it is going to make a great reserve ship, and a great ship in its own right as well, to be honest. It's coming in its 1945 configuration, which is going to give you an abundance of anti-aircraft firepower. However, in the top tiers of War Thunder Naval, you will never see planes being spawned really, because the anti-aircraft firepower is so good. There's literally just no point even spawning it, so it's kind of just useless. The Germans are also getting the first guided missile destroyer in the form of the Lutyens. Lutyens was the captain of the Bismarck when it was sank fighting HMS Rodney and one of the King George of the 5th class. I can't remember which one it was that was with HMS Rodney. So we get the ASROC launcher in the middle, that doesn't work. We get the 2 5-inch 54 calibers, and then we also get a single launcher for the RIM 54, or the RIM 24A, sorry. Pretty nice ship at 5.3, but again, due to the compression in Naval, at 5.3 you're going to be facing 6.3, which means you can face early battleships, and you can't really do anything in a destroyer against battleships, especially considering you don't even have any torpedoes anymore. German Coastal is also getting the MPK PR1331. This is a downgraded version of the Soviet boat, only having at the front, it's got the 2 30mm cannons, which are decent, but we'll get onto that shortly. And at the rear it gets the twin 57mm gun. Now the main downside of this vehicle is that it is a frigate, which means it gets a destroyer spawn. So you are going to be spawning at battle rating 4.3 alongside vehicles such as the Erich Gies, the Anton Schmidt, all of which have much bigger guns, they're a lot faster, they've got torpedoes, and you are going to be spawning in the exact same spot, so it's not like you can even get into cover. So pretty useless really if you can get it into a coastal area, but because you spawn with the destroyers, you're not going to be in the coastal area, so kind of pointless in my opinion. The Soviets are getting one addition for Naval this update in the form of the Stalingrad. This is another fictional ship. It is a battle cruiser. As you can see, the armor only 180mm, which is pretty terrible to be honest. The barbette and the turret fronts are a little bit better, about 9.5 inches. But at the end of World War II, the Soviets didn't really have any expertise whatsoever in designing ships. As you can see, you got basically 4 super firing turrets at the front, which is very, very silly if you know anything about ship design. You're putting a lot of weight high up in the ship. But somehow the Soviets created some 12-inch guns with a 62 long caliber, which gives it some frankly ridiculous penetration readings. As you can see, this completely fictional gun, which is 12 inches in caliber, has better penetration than the American 16-inch 45s. Actually, slight correction, you've got 20mm less penetration. But I think I'll admit, a 12-inch gun that is slightly less capable compared to a 16-inch gun, especially a gun that never existed and was just fictional. Gaijin is being a little bit naughty, like why is this in the game? The British though are getting 2 new ships this update. Up first we have HMS Fiji. This was a subclass of one of the Town class, I believe. I'm not entirely sure the difference between the Colony class and the the bigger Town class like the Belfasts, but they both get the same 12 6-inch guns, but Fiji is batter rating 5.7 whereas Belfast is 6.0. Not entirely sure why. The Fiji seems to have all of the capabilities and it also gets torpedoes. Doesn't have the best anti-aircraft firepower I guess, but it's not really that bad in War Thunder at the minute. But the real star of this update for me at least is the British HMS Prince of Wales, one of the King George V class of battleships. This is coming after HMS Rodney, which also shares the same batter rating of 7.7. Originally, this ship was going to have 3 quad turrets. As you can see here, it was going to have another one of these up here. But during the designing phase, they basically realised it would come in overweight due to the London and Washington naval treaties. So they had to reduce the super firing turret down to a twin. The main firepower of the ship though is 10 14-inch guns. With an ace crew, this gives you a reload of 30 seconds, which is quite slow for a 14-inch gun. The main shells are a little bit disappointing though, with only 624mm of penetration and a very slow muzzle velocity of 757 meters per second. That is actually quite significantly below average. This might give you better deck penetration at long range, but it is going to be quite a while before those shells actually land on your target, which might make aiming quite difficult. The HE shell isn't really that good either, with only 42 kilos of effective TNT filler, which is workable, but nothing really amazing. The secondary battery of 16 5.25-inch 50 caliber guns is pretty decent, especially in the anti-aircraft role, but again, you will very rarely see an aircraft in the top tiers of War Thunder, but it is still useful for shooting at enemy cruisers. The Japanese are getting a rather strange looking cruiser. From the front it looks normal enough, having 6 6-inch guns. Then if we look at the back of the vessel, you basically realise it's kind of like an early aircraft tender, I guess you'd call it. They basically took the rear half of the ship and just made it into a big catapult. The Japanese had a quite nasty habit of doing this towards the end of the war when they were a little bit short on aircraft carriers. I'm not entirely sure why Gaijin has added this at 5.3. You only have 6 6-inch guns, which aren't amazing to begin with. I guess considering you can face destroyers in this, you probably could bully them a little bit if you just stayed bow on. But quite a cool addition, but not something that I particularly think is going to be that effective. The Italians are getting the RN Armando Diaz. This is coming in rank 3 at batter rating 5.0. And I'm pretty sure it's just a copy and paste of this year's Battle Pass reward, I'm pretty certain. At 5.0, I guess you could make it work, but there's nothing really special about the Italian ships. I don't really have any compulsion to play them at all. Italy is also getting a new coastal vessel. This is the Cassiopeia, which is named after a constellation, I believe, or something. Again, like the German coastal vessel, this gets a destroyer spawn. The problem with that is it's only armed with a single 76mm gun here. So if you're going to be spawning with World War II destroyers with about 8 127mm guns, and you've got one 3-inch gun. So like, what is the point of this vehicle at all. As you can see, the Cassiopeia is coming in rank 5 of coastal, which means it's going to cost you about 250,000 RP to even unlock it, and it's going to be completely dead on arrival to begin with. So unless this gets changed to have a coastal boat spawn, like the little blue triangle there, anything with the little blue triangle gets a coastal spawn. Anything with like a 5-sided shape like this gets a destroyer spawn. And as you can see, the Cassiopeia is just completely useless. Why would you use this against a destroyer? There's literally one gun on it. There's literally no reason at all to ever play this vessel. And finally, for this update video, we have 2 French vessels. Up first, we have Le Corse. This is a new coastal premium. As you can see, you can double click on it and it will do some, it'll move the torpedo for some. I'm not sure why Guardian have modeled this, but it's kind of cool. This is coming in rank 4 of the French coastal at a battle rating of 4.0. It essentially is a copy and paste of the Le Brestois, but the Le Brestois gets 2 57mm twin turrets and a single 100mm gun on the stern here. The Le Corse just gets 3 of the 57mm turrets, so you get 6 57mm guns basically. As you can see, the 57mm guns only come equipped with HE rounds, and again it only gets a destroyer spawn, not spawning with the coastal vessels. As you can see though, these guns have a very high rate of fire. It's not really going to do too much damage, to be honest, just using HE. But you can just kind of annoy people, I guess. Kind of like destroy vital components on the superstructure and stuff like that. And again, if this thing actually manages to get into the coastal area, it will be absolutely lethal. But you're going to be spawning next to other destroyers and within range of enemy destroyer guns, which is going to absolutely massacre you. The good thing though is, at the minute, the guns don't seem to have any sort of cooldown on them, which means you can just keep firing constantly, which I guess is a good thing. And finally, for the French, we have the Suffren, which is the lead, it's the lead ship of the Suffren class in the 1945 configuration. This ship has 50 caliber long 8-inch guns, giving it pretty decent firepower. It's coming after the Colbert and also shares the same battle rating of 5.3. But again, with the compression in the mid tiers of War Thunder Naval, your heavy cruiser can be fighting 6.3 battleships where you literally can't do anything to them. As you can see, you don't have any sort of armor piercing round at all. You have high explosive as well as semi-armor piercing, which isn't really going to do anything against a battleship. So yeah, it's another heavy cruiser for the French that is kind of dead on arrival. And that's pretty much everything, lads, for this update. I'm really glad that we finally got the Prince of Wales and the King George V class battleship. The South Dakota class is also really cool in my opinion. But the PK PR1331 thing is just dead on arrival. The Cassiopeia is just a complete waste of time. I don't even know why they paid someone to model this. And as well, Gaijin hates the French and gives them 2 additional crap naval vehicles. But anyway, lads, be sure to let me know down in the comments what vehicles you're excited to play, what you aren't excited to see. And as always, boys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.